On today's episode, I start my road to glory with the statistically poorest team in the Skybet Championship. Stay tuned to see if I can really do anything with these guys. Hey guys, so a lot of you guys have been asking me how I play, what types of teams I use, what types of formations I use, and I figured one of the best ways to understand how I think about the game is to kind of watch me actually play a couple games or a season or build a team or something like that. So I decided I was going to do this road to glory where I was going to take a team and really go through the process that I would do in my own Master League. Now, to get there, I would usually use Newcastle. I'm a Newcastle fan, so I'd usually take that team, essentially dismantle it, keep a couple players that I like, and then build a whole new team around there, change the formation, etc. And my goal would be to win the Champions League, the Premiership, and the FA Cup all in one season. So I'd want to do the triple at the highest stage. Now, for the purposes of what we're doing here, a road to glory makes a little more sense with a much worse team. Because Newcastle, even though they're not the best in the Premiership, has a lot of really good building blocks that I can use right away. And so what it means is you won't actually see the process of building a new team from the bottoms up in a situation where you have zero money and you have zero talent on the bench and you literally have to start from scratch and actually build up your ability to go and purchase players and then also build up your ability to put the right team together, both from a youth perspective and an experienced player perspective, to actually get promoted. So I made the decision that I was going to pick the worst possible team in the Skybet Championship. And the reason for this is I do want to be in the Premiership. I do want to play against the Premiership team, but I don't want to start there. I want you guys to see the grind. I want you to see the realistic results that I get. In some cases, getting smashed early on, especially, I probably will. And so if you look at all of the teams in Skybet, statistically the worst team is actually Wycombe Wanderers. And the reason for this is they have a 1.5 star rating, but then they also have a forward rating of 62, a midfield rating of 60, and a defensive rating of 60. Now, for every single team I looked at, this is by far the worst possible situation. And by comparison, if I was going to start off with the Master League original lineup, what you'll see is even if I go to the same setup, any of the teams you pick with the Master League original lineup will give you the same stats. So for Skybet, I'm going to have forwards of 65, midfield is 64, defensive is 60. So even though it's a 1.5 star team, it's a better team. Plus, I feel like some of the youth components might give me a little bit of an advantage over starting with the Wycombe as a base. So I made the decision that I was going to start with Wycombe. Now, realistically, it's going to be a total rebuild. I'll tell you right now, and I'm going to show you this. I'm going to show you how I work through the process. But for me, I already know every single player on this team is either going to get released or sold, preferably sold. All right, so when I go to my manager selection, I'm going to select Lampard. And I usually would actually select Ryan Giggs. But genuinely, I feel like Chelsea have done this guy dirty. I know that if there are Chelsea fans out there, you probably have a specific feeling about this. But personally for me, being an England fan as well, and watching what happened and how it went down, I felt like Lampard should have been given an opportunity to see the season out. He is a Chelsea legend. He's an England legend. I don't think he was doing a bad job. I think Tuchel's come in. I think, yes, he's a good coach. Yes, he's going to be able to do good things, and his record started off really well so far. But to be honest with you, I think eventually the Premiership will catch up with him like it does with everyone else. He's not going to have all of the answers. He didn't have them at PSG. He's not going to have them at Chelsea. He's a high-level manager that's been put in a high-pressure job, but is he really going to be able to do so much more than Lampard would have done? Anyway, I'm selecting Lampard really because of that reason when I would usually select Giggs. So let's talk about general settings. So this is how I'm going to set it up. My transfer frequency is going to be normal. And the reason for this is if you set it to low or high, you start getting pretty unrealistic shifts. And I feel like normal is actually pretty good. So this is really for realism from my perspective, mostly for the computer team. The negotiation difficulty, this is actually really important. I'm leaving this at normal. I've tried this a couple times and I've set it to difficult, basically making it really hard to negotiate. And it's impossible to get players, especially at the low levels. And so I'm setting it to normal because I feel like that's probably fair. And because especially I'm starting off in such a bad place, I need to actually be able to bring in some players in a semi-realistic way. I'm going to tell you how I'm going to deal with realistic transfers in a second once I get past the general setting. But as far as negotiating negotiating, I need to at least be able to negotiate somewhat realistically. So I'm leaving it at normal. For starting budget, I am going to set the starting budget to small. And this is because I am at Wigan. 2, I know I'm going to replace the whole team. And if I set the starting budget to normal, it's not going to be that much more, but it does mean I'll be able to go out and get a couple players immediately. And so what I'm trying to force myself to do here is to actually work through the process of managing my youth system, the loan system, the transfers, and having some sort of balance between those so that I can show you how I build transfer fees, how I leverage the loan system to bring in players to get me through a season, and then how I eventually build up my salary budget so that I can actually sign players I want to sign. And this is a process that might actually take multiple seasons. So my hope is here that, one, I'm making it a little more difficult and probably more realistic for a team like Wycombe, but on the second hand, you actually get to see how I'm playing the transfer system and the loan system as well. First window transfers, I'm leaving it open because I want to make a bunch of changes as soon as I can. Salaries, annual, I like it there. You can do whatever you want. The match level, I'm sitting at superstar. I don't play a lot of super low league superstar with bad teams, mostly because it's not super enjoyable because usually you get spanked. But I am setting it superstar. That is the level I play at with all of my other leagues. I do expect to get smashed some here. I'm not entirely sure what I'm in for, but we're gonna do it, and that's the level we're gonna leave it at. For match time, I'm setting it to 15 minutes. I think that's a decent match time. You can do between 10 and 15, I think is somewhat satisfying. I feel like once you start getting around 10 minutes, the games actually go too quickly, and I don't know, I don't feel as immersed. I feel like 15 minutes is really good, 7-minute halves, and you really kind of get into the feel of the game, and you get some of that more realistic play where it's a little bit of back and forth, it's dancing around the box, you still get these breaks, but then fatigue actually can play a role in the later stages, you know, the last 10 minutes of the first half and the last 15-20 of the second half. And so I like the dynamic of around 15, 14, etc. So I'll leave it at 15 for me. I'm going to use dollars as my currency, and this is mostly because I'm in the US right now, and that's how my brain's wired. Otherwise, I'd probably use pounds. And then on the transfer window, in my previous videos, I talk about setting this to every day when you start and then switching it. I'm going to leave it at every day right now because literally every single day counts for me from a transfer perspective. So I want to be managing that very, very tightly to make sure that I have every single opportunity to loan a player out, to sell a player, or to bring a player in. And I know there's going to be some negotiation shenanigans. So I know that I'm going to negotiate, fail in some cases, and have to do some other things to get a player in. And that means every single day is really going to matter here. So I'm going to leave it at that, and I'm not going to change that at all. All right, so we're now in a position. Frank's come into the club. He's shaking hands. He's having some good conversations. He goes out on the field, takes a look at the players. I'm sure what he's saying there is, hey, these guys aren't very good. Now we get to season objectives and goal setting. Now this is really important. While they're all sitting around drinking their coffee, and this guy spends a ton of time on the phone, which I'm sure the real life guys do as well, they want to discuss the season objectives with me. And their goal here is a ridiculous goal. They're saying Wycombe, who is by far the worst team in the league. This has got nothing to do with real life, by the way. If you're a Wycombe fan, good on you. That's awesome. I'm sure that they're better than what is being listed here. But for them to think they can get the ace spot, I think is ridiculous. And so what I've done is I've gone for the lowest option, which is basically saying, I think we can be in the middle of the table. And that's given me the 16th spot here, which is huge. I mean, that's double the wiggle room for me failing. Because I also don't want to get fired in my Master League in the first season, which is totally possible. But 16th isn't unachievable. I feel like 16th is okay. For the first season, me building my team, me figuring out what I want to do, building my budget, I feel like that's something where I can probably actually get somewhere between 14 and 10 maybe. But 8 is ridiculous. If you set those expectations early, you're probably just going to get smashed, especially with a team like this where I know I'm up against it. All right, we do the press conference. They congratulate me on being manager. That's awesome. Very nice. Thank you very much. And then they ask me what my plan is. And I'm thinking to myself, all right, like these are all good options. And then he goes and says, I want to say thank you to the chairperson and sports director for believing in me. My first job here is to teach the team my brand of soccer. If a player finds himself unable to adapt, then he'll be sent packing. Now this is very true. Like I plan to get rid of everyone on this team, but I do think this is a little harsh, right? Like right off the bat, if this was real life and you're a player here in that, you know, I think it would be a little scary. It's Tuchelish Lampard. That's not what we want to do. All right, what style of soccer do we want to play? You know, for me, I do like to put on a show, but realistically, it's Wycombe. So what's interesting is I want him to play hard, but then again, like I'm really surprised here. Lampard's hardcore, and you know, I know these are stock answers, but there's no place for players who aren't ready to lay it on the line. I mean, dude, this is a Skybet championship. Like, I don't know what you're expecting, Lampard. Anyway, all right, so we're done with that. Let's move on to the meat. So we're in the Master League. Let's talk about the first things I'm gonna do. So I like to check my messages, mostly just to help me arrange my thoughts. So I know there's some training stuff here, there's some scouting stuff, there's budget management. All right, so the first thing in my mind is, oh, go set your budget stuff up, right? So I'm gonna go to my budget settings, and then I set this just because what I'm trying to do here, honestly, by setting receive all of these as salary and then the contract options as transfer, is I'm trying to set myself up so that I know I'm gonna loan a bunch of players in the first season, and this is what in real life a lot of lower level teams do anyway. But what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna use that time where I'm loaning players to try and build a salary budget so I can buy players. And this is gonna be a really fine balance across probably the first couple seasons of this league, because getting salary to actually have good players in where I can go and buy players that fit my system, that play my play style, that are young enough where I can have them for a couple seasons at some sort of peak level is gonna be really difficult. And so I am gonna need proper salary to do it. And you know, for loan options, realistically, in a lot of cases, you can't multi-year loan a player. So in a lot of cases, when you loan a player, you're gonna use them a lot, and then next season you might not be able to loan them at all. So, you know, I have to be realistic about the fact that, yeah, I mean, every season I can bring in different loan players if I want to, but ultimately, like, I do want to build a team. I do want that team to have a high team spirit, which means they have to learn my system, which means they have to play in my system, which means I have to own them ultimately across multiple seasons. So that's why I'm setting it this way, because I want to build up that salary budget to be able to bring in players long term. All right, so the next thing I'm gonna do, I'll take a quick look at my team here just to see what I've got. Not that I'm not gonna look at these individual players. I've looked at them already. All right, so we play a 3-3-4. So let's see. Now, all right, I'll talk a little about my philosophy on how I'm going to bring in players. Now, I've thought about this a lot, and the first problem is if I just am able to free negotiate players, I am going to be in a situation where I can go in and bring in the exact type of players that I want. And as much as that helps the road to glory and getting into a good position, I do think it's a little unfair. It's unfair for the computer, because if I can go and pick the exact type of players I want with the exact type of play styles that fit my system, I can also go and loan more experienced players and figure out which ones will come to my club. And anyway, go through this process of testing the fence until I find players that basically over-index the Skybet League. I can go and do this and bring in some really good players for a price that I can probably manage that gives me a little bit of an unfair advantage. And so what I've made the decision to do is that I can only bring in players in two ways. The first way is I have to use my scouting. I can only bring in external players through scouting unless, and this is the big caveat, unless I review them in my budget player series. If I review a player in my budget player series, I can use the advanced search and go and get that player. And that's the compromise that I've come up with, because I've already done a bunch of work on the budget player series, and so I do think it's fair to be able to go and get those players. Now, I know that some of them are really good, but in reality, that's what I did the budget series for, to go and be able to find these good players who were cheap. I didn't know I was going to be doing this when I did it, but I think that's fair. So I'm going to be able to go and advanced search the players that I've done a budget review for, but outside of those players, I'm going to limit myself to only using the scouting system to bring in all of the remaining players. And I think that is very, very fair, because it forces me to use the scouting system to go and look for those players that I need and give me the options to bring those in. Whereas I can get some sort of boost over the first season or two leveraging the budget player reviews that I've done. And even those, in some cases, I'm not going to be able to go get them. But for the most part, I mean, that's what I did the series for. So those are the rules I'm setting for myself. All right, so before we get into exactly who I'm going to go after, the first thing I want to do is go to my squad list and essentially put everybody up for loan or sale. And the reason for that is I need cash. So I gotta go and try and get that money, man. You know, right now I have almost 600,000 in transfer and I have almost 30,000 in salary. I mean, you guys know how this is. I can't really get much for that. I maybe get one player, but I can't really sign anyone. I mean, no one's gonna take 27K. You know, even youth players are gonna want more than 27K. So I can't sign anybody decent at all. So this is gonna be a loan game. So what I'm basically doing is putting every single player up for loan or transfer. That's gonna allow me to get some sort of fee that will then be placed in my transfer budget. And then through that transfer budget component, I can now go out out and try and loan some of these players, probably mostly players from my budget seat. So that's what you see me doing here. Go through, I literally do to every player on their team. Nobody is exempt from this process. The next thing I do is I go to my youth team, and what you'll see me do here is I arrange the players by market value. And the reason I do that is because if I set everyone here to loan, and this actually, maybe I should have considered this with my main squad too, but if I set everybody here to loan, what will end up happening is I'll end up getting a bunch of really crappy offers where I'm getting like 50K, but then I still have to pay a player's salary, because when you loan a player from your youth team, you have to sign them first, right? And so you see there's this annual salary here. So to loan this player, I have to pay that annual salary. So I have to have enough salary budget, which I don't right now because I have 27. So if someone wanted to come in and loan Harrington, I'd have to pony up 150K in salary, which, firstly, I don't have. But secondly, if they're going to loan him, they're going to pay a percentage of his value as well. So they'll probably pay, 30 to 40% of his market value. So if I can get the 150 salary, I can probably get 2.5 million plus for Harrington to loan, which at this stage in my journey is probably 2 to 3 loan players that are better than Harrington. So that's the thought process that I'm going with. So I go through, and I think I go through Harrington, Olikinen, Bieri, Teixeira, Russo, Viner, and McDowell. So that's 7 players. Each of those players is valued above 2.5 million, which means that I'm gonna get at least $1 million for each of them if I do end up loaning those players. Now, obviously, I do have to find the salary first, which is why I need to sell some first team players that I'm not gonna use. All right, so once that's done, I'm going to go to my scouting, and essentially I'm going to go and set my scouts up so that they immediately start looking for players. Now, for me, I'm gonna focus on defense and a goalkeeper, and the reason for that is because those are the areas in my budget series that I haven't done yet, so I can't go and find really good players there. This will actually encourage me to do the budget defenders, goalkeepers, and wingers, left backs, etc., because maybe I can then use them in this playthrough. But those are the positions that I know I'm not going to be able to go and actually find the perfect player for based on anyone that I've reviewed. So that's what I do here. I set up all 3 scouts, and now to the advanced search. So the first player I'm going to go after, I'm sure will be absolutely no surprise to you. It's my boy NG from Boa Vista. He, by far, of all of the players I review, is the most dangerous player at the lower level, and I'm hoping that he can reproduce some of the magic that I've seen him reproduce in other teams that I've used. And I've used him in my club as well, and he's just as good in my club at the lower levels. So he's going to be my first signing. If I don't get anyone else, I want him because I think he can make a difference. Now, my issue is I'd ideally like to purchase him. I obviously can't. He has a salary requirement of $250,000 and a transfer fee to buy of $700,000 plus the $300 that's going to cost to loan him for the year. So I'm going to put the offer in, see if I can negotiate a little and see what happens. So I'm going to go back and just check my activities really quick. So I've done my scouting. I'm not going to worry about training because I'm going to flip all the players. So I'll worry about training at a later date, and the auto training at this point is fine for what I have. My budget's been set. Don't need to worry about my managerial career. Season targets I know, and then the schedule portion of it I know. All right, so now we're just gonna forward a couple days until we get some sort of response. So it took 3 days. I didn't get any response until that 3 days, and there's been 0 movement with anything else other than NG, essentially my offer being rejected. So this is why I was saying every single day counts, because in a lot of cases here, you're going to get a rejection early, and it's gonna be up to you to figure out why. So I'm pretty sure I know why I got rejected. Even though I gave them the maximum loan transfer fee, he's saying he did not see a future at our club, which means that I probably need to give him the max salary fee as well, and potentially some of the options also. The other thing is too, because I checked loan to buy, not just loan, it means that there's an additional dynamic that's being evaluated in the process. So what I'm gonna do is I'm actually just gonna go back, forward a day, and forwarding a day will remove him from the queue. So it means basically once he's removed from the queue, all negotiations are over and I can start again. Because I added him to my list, I'm gonna go right back to my list, and now I'm gonna try and negotiate with him again. And now all I'm gonna do is focus on getting him from a loan perspective. So I just want him at my club this year. So whether or not I have him long term doesn't matter as much to me. So forward a couple of days. All right, so now we have a response. And look at that. He wants a little, the Boa Vista want a little more money to increase the loan fee, an extra 20K. I'm okay with that. that. And now I get to sign my first player, who I think is probably, in my opinion, going to be the best player in the Sky Bet League. Maybe not statistically, but for me, that I could purchase, that I could use for my style of play. And that's it. So got my first player. And now I'm going to start to go down the line to take a look at the other budget players that I've reviewed that I can bring in. All right, so at this point, I'm not going to go through all of the players I went through. Take a look at a bunch of them, and we'll see who I can get. I'll walk you through who I have once we get through the next couple days and I figure out who's feasible. So we've forwarded a day, and look at that. Our boy is at the club physically. He's shaking hands. He wants to be there. And now you can see on my list the other players that I've gone for. So Willian Ariel, I thought he was really, really good. He was a little expensive, but I'm going to try and get him, I think, as a box-to-box defensive midfielder slash midfielder. I think he's really good. Kayembe, I think Kayembe is awesome. Very, very aggressive. So I'm going to try and get him. Plus, he's decently cheap. Sulemana, I thought was really good. He was the cheapest out of the advanced strikers. And I did try and look at some other players, you know, Dalmau, Basong, a bunch of the other players that I reviewed. The problem is some of them at this point, I'm going to have to make a choice. I'm not going to be able to get them all because some of them are more expensive. Like Dalmau, for example, is $2 million to loan. So I'm not going to be able to loan him. So I'm going to start with these guys and then see how far I get, what other types of players I sell. And so we're going to play the game now where we just are going to progress a couple of days and then see what we have. All right, so you can see I progressed the day. I've got an alert. Let's go and check it. Okay, so this is interesting. So this guy, Onyedinma, the New York Red Bulls want him for 6 months on loan, and they're going to pay me almost $650K for him. That's a good deal. That might be an extra player that I get. Now, the challenge here is, obviously, I still got to pay his salary, which means that I don't get that added to the salary budget, but it does mean that essentially I get free money and potentially I get to sell him when he comes back from loan as well. So I'm going to take this one. And basically, this is what you're going to see. This is what I do for the next couple days, you know, to a week or so. I basically go back and forth. I negotiate. Some of the negotiations fail. Some of the negotiations succeed. If they fail, I go back and renegotiate, and I'm using the same trick. If the negotiations fail, I basically, instead of trying to loan to buy, I go back and just give them the full loan amount. Don't try and buy the player, and then you get the player from that. And so, yeah, I mean, you're overpaying on a loan, but the reality is I need these players, and I know these players, so you know, and to scout, generally scouting takes between 2 and 3 weeks to get anyone decent, and I just can't wait for that. Plus, I'm not scouting in the positions that I'm just searching for the other players for, so I have to go and get those positions. So, all right, so if we fast forward a little, what you'll see is I have my first youth player loan, and it is our boy McDowell. And you see here, McDowell will cost me $59K salary, but I'll get 1.1 million transfer fee. So that 1.1 million is going to pay for 2 players, Kayembe and Sulemana probably. So I get 2 good guys in for a year on loan to give this one guy out on loan who, to be honest with you, isn't going to make an impact to my team. The only thing I got to do is figure out how to come up with a 59K salary. So mostly what we do is pray that somebody comes in and requests to purchase one of our players, and magically we get somebody that comes in and purchases Akin Fenwa, and they're going to buy him for 100K, and he is going to clear, I think, about 40K in salary. And so that right there, ladies and gentlemen, is going to get us to 68K salary, which gives me the 59K I need to go and loan McDowell. And so what else you're going to see here basically is there's a bunch of loan offers that come in. So what's really interesting about this season is I don't get a ton of transfer offers. I get a lot of loan offers. And so there's a lot of people coming in and loaning my players, which kind of is good and kind of sucks because on one hand, I'm getting transfer budget for free basically because I'm not going to use that player anyway. But on the other hand, I'm not getting the salary budget that I need. So at some point, I'm going to have to, when the players come back from loan, sell them anyway. But I basically get to double dip over the course of a season, which you know, I'm not tore up about as long as I can bring a couple players in. So the next thing we see is our boy William has accepted and agreed to join us, and he is going to cost me 2 mil in loan transfer, which sucks. But I think I really need someone at a position. I think he's good, and so you know we're going to take him. And so he's going to join the club. Give him a little tour, look around. Thank you very much. He's very happy to be here. And then we basically rinse and repeat this process. So, you know, I get a couple more players that I sell and loan. You know, we fast forward, and both Kayembe and Suleimana will eventually agree. And then we get a little update on our scouting. And so there's a couple guys that come back in scouting. No one great's going to come back because we're low league. But there is two guys that come back. There is a guy named Sovic. He's defender, decent defensive awareness of 77, 96 height. But the setting that I used to actually go get him is I wanted someone with some skills. Heading, marking, interception, that's good enough for me. I'll take those. I would like acrobatic clear, but he just doesn't have it. And then the next guy, there's another guy here, Drujic. I don't know how to pronounce that. But basically, I think he's going to be my second one. And he's got acrobatic clear. He's big as well. So the goal there, bring these two guys in, bolster my defense, get some big guys. It's low league football, so there's going to be a lot of long balls, a lot of headering. So my hope is I'm going to be able to get these two big guys at the back that are going to help with the headers and stop people from scoring headers against me. That's the goal. Doesn't mean that it's going to in any way work. All right, so now we fast forward. We've chosen to sign Suleimana first because he's probably more critical. He signs, and we've also got Kayembe. So we've got our key guys, and we just keep working the process, work in the transfer market, work in the loan list. And now finally we get to a point where we're going to start to take a look at our team and the players that we've brought in. And so the formation I'm going to play, because these guys are already playing this, I think I'm going to leave the 3-4 formation intact here. Now in G, I'm playing him at attacking midfielder. That is by far his best position in my opinion because of his aggressive ability to burst through, and I know his play style. Suleimana I'll play on the left, and I got Kayembe and William that I'm going to play in the middle. This Ipizu guy, he is a post player, so I'm going to leave him central, and then on the right wing we're going to have to figure something else out there. But right now this is kind of how it's looking, and then I'll replace the two center backs when I get them, and I'll show you that in a second. So we go through some more signings, we get everything wrapped up here, and we're about to get into our first game. And we were able to sign both of their center backs, so I'll just show you real quick. We plug those guys in at center back, and so this is what we're going to start with here. We're going to start with the left winger, center forward, right winger, an attacking midfielder, and then essentially two defensive midfielders and 4 at the back. And we're going to see, I don't know if this is the formation I'm going to stick with at all. We're going to play, we'll probably change our formation a couple of times. If I had more money and I was in the Premiership and I had more ability to dictate the type of players I was going to bring in, I would put a system together, and I would play that system. I would go and buy players specifically for that system that I know I wanted to play. Because we're in a situation where I'm not going to be able to do that, I'm going to have a mix of players that I know and a mix of players that I don't. I'm going to have to figure out how this team plays, how the other teams play. I don't play a lot of low league, so I'm not entirely sure what the other teams are going to play. I'm probably going to have a couple test matches, so expect as we go forward that I might change my formation pretty significantly. I might change my tactics pretty significantly, depending on where the players play and things like that, how they play. All right, so we take care of a little more stuff on the transfer market, and we get into our match opener where Frank basically wants the fans to be pleased. And so that is it, my friends. The next episode will be the match, and we will see what happens. All right, hopefully this was interesting and good. Let me know, give me your feedback, man. Honestly, your honest feedback, and hopefully this turns out well. I'll kind of show you some more of the dynamics and mechanics that I'm looking at, and we'll do tactics in the game in the next session or the next episode and see how it goes, guys. All right, see you soon. Bye. Hey guys, I'm new to YouTube, so if you like the content, please give me a like. If you like the topics, please subscribe, and always leave a comment if you can. Thanks, guys.